Mr. Valley and Mr. Copine to today's agenda because to fill some quorums. And we'll have a roll call vote getting this started. She record these. She records these, doesn't she? I'll wait. Give me a second.
Anyway, but that's okay. Not that it's going to change your bank account. Not that it's going to change your bank account significantly.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. As I said, Mr. Valley and Mr. Copine have been appointed. Roll call vote. I am here. Ms. Allen. Not Mr. Kitson. Ms. Shippert.
Yes.
Ms. White. Mr. Wilson.
Here.
He is actually he's on a medical, so he will count because of the change to our rules and procedures. Mr. Copine, Mr. Valley are both here. Dee and Alice will be in and out. Visitors, we'll get to you guys as we go around. So we have in front of us the first renewable gas information, it looks like, and ordinance that Alice has worked on. I wish Alice would get in. I believe she's getting you some paperwork.
Basically, she's using other county.
Yep, you guys have a copy of, have you guys had a chance to look at this?
You got one. Okay.
Do you need one?
Oh, she's printing. Why we'll give.
She's printing. We'll just wait. There she is.
We're waiting for more copies. There you go.
Which copy are you looking at?
Which one did you just give?
You haven't got that. That's the-
Okay,
Oh, that's
the
the one I
visitors need that one too.
These are emails before, so you guys haven't.
Okay, great.
Okay. Did the visitors get this one?
Yes.
Okay.
All of this.
Not all.
You guys need a pipeline landfill. They don't need one. She got one. Yep. I don't think. So do you want to walk us through where you're at with as far as pipeline ordinance and what you handed out, Alice, in the landfill gas to renewable natural gas facility?
All right, as it states, what I would propose potentially is allowing their natural gas facility as an, especially used in an I3 heavy industrial district. So therefore, I've gone through and outlined everything that the facility would be required to follow if it was in that category. They are supposed to give us a presentation today, so more or less, these are things to keep in mind while they're giving their presentation to make sure that it would be appropriate in that zone or whether we need to consider different things. Chris needs one.
I need one.
I think he has one.
So with that being said, and I know you guys just got this, but you're going to give your presentation regardless. So would you be interested in giving your presentation now? So Jonathan, can we get the presentation pulled up? And if you guys would like to introduce yourselves and what you do and where you're from and what your social security number is, credit card information.
We'll take the credit cards.
My name is Steve Hall. I'm a senior project manager for Amoresco. And Amoresco is the company that is proposing to do the RNG facility here in Lee County as well. We're a renewable energy company. And I brought Nick Polk with me from Audubon. They are one of our consultants. They specialize in land options and pipeline arrangements, and he'll do a separate presentation on Audubon right after this one, just so you understand some of the players involved here. So first of all, go to the next slide. A little bit about Amoresco. It's headquartered in Framingham, Mass. Company was started in.
Tom, can you see all that? Tom and Rick, can you guys see all that on your end?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, thank you. Want to make sure they can see.
Yep, no problem. So a little bit about the company. It was founded in 2000, became a publicly held company in 2010. This slide's a little bit outdated. We're probably around 1,900 employees now, over $1 billion in annual revenue, and growing. Amoresco has been involved in various types of renewable energy projects, from solar, wind, combined heat and power, and now renewable natural gas is one of our big players. We also do industrial building efficiency projects and different things like that. Have offices all over the US, a couple in Canada and the UK, and very well established company. Next slide, please. This kind of gives you a feel for where we are in North America. A little hard to see, and again, this is probably a bit outdated and has grown since then. Next slide. These just highlighting some of our biogas projects that we've done. And this is a list of different awards we've received for some of the projects that we've done for project excellence. Next slide. All right, so basically I just wanted to give you kind of a simplistic rundown on what renewable natural gas is and why it's out there today, and why it's a desirable commodity, and facilities like we're proposing here are being built. Next slide. And next. All right. So basically, renewable natural gas is kind of a broad term. It can be derived from anaerobic digestion using food waste, wastewater residuals, agricultural waste, or landfill gas. And basically, it's taking the gases that are derived from these processes and trying to separate out the methane, which is essentially what natural gas is, and clean it up and remove all the other constituents except the methane, and then be able to present it into the pipeline to a utility where it is distributed from that point. Next slide. This is a quick overview on how RNG is produced, and this specifically refers to a landfill gas facility. On the left side of the page, you have what is existing at the landfill, which is the landfill, a pipeline grid, and then a flare. What we would do is we would come off before the gas goes to the flare, and we basically have 3 lines of process. where, actually, let me pull this up so I can see it a little better. So in the removal process, the things that we're removing are moisture, sulfur, VOCs, siloxanes, CO2, oxygen, and nitrogen. So we have various processes that we put it through, and essentially most of these are done through tanks filled with various types of media that remove this under certain conditions of either pressure or temperature changes, cause the media to absorb the material and then release the gas. So those are basically the three stages. And then some of the what we call tail gas, which is what comes off the tanks between stages, we bring over to what we call a thermal oxidizer, which is essentially like it's a lot like the flare, but it's the combustion process is a lot different, so that part of what it can do is it burns at temperatures so high that it literally destroys the constituents that we're removing, and therefore they're not emitted into the atmosphere. At the end of the process, the gas is compressed again and then put into the natural gas pipeline and distributed by a utility. At that point, it's in the pipeline into the grid and being distributed. It's at that point it's also metered. We have to meet certain qualities that for the gas that we have established in our interconnection agreement with the gas utility, so that we provide them adequate quality gas, or pipeline quality gas, I guess would be the better term, for their distribution. If for some reason there was an upset in the process, the quality drops off, we get shut off from the gas utility, and we have to basically correct whatever the issue is before we can start sending gas again.
Real quick, as I sit here and look at the renewable gas facility, a couple things that I see in here are odor. Will this create odor?
No, in fact, it should eliminate or reduce odor that would normally come from the landfill. It's an enclosed process, so that you should get better air quality as far as odor control than you would currently see with the landfill, because it's contained, and you're removing a lot of the constituents that can contribute to that.
You don't see any air pollution greater than 44 microns.
I would have to look at what we have proposed, but we have an air permit that has been granted by the state of Illinois.
Okay,
That would be in EPA compliance at minimum.
and then heat and glare. I see that you're gonna have a utility flare. It just can't be as described at the lot line. So that would not be an issue, correct?
When you're talking about processing I'm gonna call it gas, but it's a combination of things as it comes from the landfill. It goes through several processes where you said it has some media that destroys the hazard, destroys part of it. Is there anything in there in that process that is hazardous material? I'm talking about, I think I'm talking about what's in those 3 tan boxes. I can't read the ledger, but
No, they're just, I mean, you could use the analogy of almost like a catalytic converter on a car, where it's removing constituents and pollutants from the air from the car. But if you were to, disconnect the catalytic converter You know, A, it's not going to release those constituents, and B, you don't necessarily have a hazardous waste there. The media is kept in the vessels, and then when it's changed out, it would be brought to the landfill for disposal upon change out. And as far as hazardous material, I've never heard of any hazardous material at our existing sites being produced from this process.
Okay, just curious,
Yeah.
because whatever, if it's changed out, the used product would probably go to our landfill, and concerned about hazardous materials there.
Yeah, and it actually specifies here, I believe on the 4th or 5th page, toxic and non-noxious materials and how they have to be handled if there are any. So even what Alice has prepared here addresses that. So
When you talked about the different components where you get this renewable natural gas, there was food waste, agricultural uses, dairy, et cetera. It seemed landfill was the smallest. So is this is landfills?
It is, and part of what has happened, and we'll get into it a little bit in later slides, but part of what has happened is initially, a lot of times, what was happening at landfills is they were going, instead of going to the flare, they were taking the gas and they were going to, I don't like to call them diesel engines because they're not diesels, but they're internal combustion engines tied to generators. And that was the trend, probably starting 20 years ago with the landfill types of gas to try to get some renewable energy from them. The trend based on certain renewable energy credits and low carbon standards that have been established by the federal government have actually pushed the industry towards doing the gas recovery and cleanup and putting into the pipeline. So this is a new and growing field. We have a number of facilities that are operational right now throughout the country. And probably the closest one is in Detroit, sorry. And but it is a growing field and a growing area for us as a company.
And you will be getting subsidies or credits, something from the government for this?
Yeah, again, we'll get into a little bit on some of the slides, and I can explain that a little bit better.
Okay.
Go to the next slide unless there's any other questions. All right, next. All right. So there's two benefits from doing these renewable gas projects. There are several states and programs out there that are pushing this because this is basically an energy offset. It's also a carbon reduction offset as well. So what happens is we produce the natural gas, it gets metered into the pipeline as we produce it to account for the amount of production we have. Not unlike windmills or solar projects that are metering their electricity into the grid. Once it gets into the grid or the pipeline, it's basically blended all together, but the total volume going into those, the grid or the pipeline is offset by this amount. And so that is tracked and based on whether it's electricity or natural gas, you get a certain amount of credit for each cubic foot or kilowatt or whatever the case is for that renewable type of energy as it's produced. And the programs vary throughout the country or even with the federal government as to what you can get for credits or subsidies in order to pay for this. And this is what essentially drives this whole market to be there because the government, the EPA, and the federal government and many states have determined that this is a good way to reduce carbon footprint. It's also a good way to reduce methane coming off the landfill and other pollutants, so that they're collected, controlled, and retained. So, and then there's also certificates or programs for transportation-based fuels, whether it's natural gas or electricity, that they're pushing very hard in order to, again, offset diesel, gas, or other typical combustion type processes. And so this is where the value to a company to build these projects comes into play. Next slide, please. That's just, if you look at they're just showing, the pipeline network across the US here, and then how it integrates into the transportation infrastructure that exists. Next slide. Again, just briefly going into the reasons and the carbon offsets and the number of states that are trying to reduce their carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions. California, obviously, being usually the typical number one. Next slide. Next slide again. This is one of our projects in Phoenix, Arizona. This one is not a landfill gas project, but it's a wastewater facility, and we're converting biogas to renewable natural gas, and it's used for vehicle fuel, and gets what they call the fuel standard carbon reduction credit. Next picture. This is a very good picture of our Detroit plant, Woodland Meadows. This is a perfect example of what we would see. I've got a few other pictures in here, but this is more representative of what you would see for a facility in Lee County, being a cold weather climate. Some of our other plants are in warm weather climate. Nothing's enclosed or anything like that. So essentially, all the pumps, compressors, and vacuum pumps are located in the building in the kind of the top right-hand corner and enclosed in there because they could potentially see damage from cold weather. As they go through the various stages of the process, they come out and you can see the various tanks and vessels that are out there doing the cleanup process. If you went from the center line out to the bottom corner, it would be kind of two wings off the process. One side, the first side heading up to the top left-hand corner, and then the other down to the bottom. And that's basically what the facility would look like. It covers roughly 2 acres. Most of it's on a gravel pad area. There are concrete foundations to support the vessels and obviously the building. And there's a small building kind of in between the tanks and the big building where all the electrical is housed. But that's probably a very good representation of what you could expect to see.
How many, I'm gonna butcher this, but is it decathermals do you anticipate the Lee County landfill to produce a year?
Sorry.
How many thermals do you believe, like this is 1.34? How many do you believe that the Lee County can produce?
It's probably going to be slightly less. This is one of our larger facilities out there. I would anticipate about 30% less at Lee County, just because of what we've done for gas surveys and what the landfill is currently producing.
So call it 1 million. Is a fair.
Yeah, yeah, and again, size and looks would likely be very similar to what you see in this picture. Next slide. And this is just another one. This is another water biogas system down in Texas. Again, the big difference between the southern facilities and this one is just enclosing pumps and compressors up here in the northern climates to protect them from the weather. Next. This is our number one. This one just came online. So in all honesty, it was not online during that. But what would have likely happened is it just would have been shut down, and then the landfill would have had to have gone to flaring. Backup resource. But this is one of our newest plants. This literally just came online a few months ago. And again, kind of the same idea, but more of it's outside than you would see typically. Next. Next. So this is, what we see in our projections for growth in RNG projects for the future. As you can see, it's a pretty decent climb. And it's in all the various fields that I mentioned earlier, whether it be, wastewater, agriculture, or landfill gas or whatever. I mean, obviously there's a finite number of landfills. The landfills have to be surveyed and, in a position where they are a good candidate to have a project. Not all of them meet that. You need certain sizes to make it economically feasible. So that's part of it as well. Slide. This kind of shows you where the more aggressive states are right now as far as what they're doing. Again, California is always there. Texas has gotten very big as well into this. Up in the Northeast, Pennsylvania has become a very big area. Wisconsin, for dairy. Next slide. And again, the demand keeps growing. It's just, like I said, especially with landfill gas, there's a finite number of landfills that, are good candidates to do this. So that's why, that's part of what's happening. The dairy, the agriculture projects tend to be smaller in size, but that'll probably likely start to grow as well in the very near future. We've got a couple projects on the books that we're looking at right now, and we keep adding to the list. Next. This just shows some of the resources that we use for supporting services and companies such as Audubon. Next. Again, this is down in Texas, kind of a side view. I actually took this picture and kind of gives you an idea of the size and appearance of the facility. Next picture. Same plant. And one more, again, the Detroit plant is next. And again, that's basically the building right there that houses all the pumps and compressors. All the tanks are off to the right. That center building's just the electrical. And that's, again, what we would anticipate, probably Lee County looking a lot like that one. Next. That is it. I was hoping that my presentation will give you a little background on Amoresco. Have a few pictures of some of the facilities, will give you some idea of what to expect and what to look at. It's when you talk about it, it's kind of a unique thing and sometimes hard to picture. So I'll make sure you can see a few facilities that we had. So at this point, I'll throw it out there for any more questions. And when we're done these questions, I'll just have Nick do a quick presentation on Amoresco and their expertise and what they're doing.
I'm very interested and excited about this in Lee County, but I have to ask the question. The volume in our landfill is less than the two in Ogle and Winnebago County that are real close to each other. Why us?
Part of
You
it.
got wrong. I want you to be here, but
Yeah, no. Part of it is we've been working with Republic all over the country, from California to Texas, and we've kind of developed a bit of a partnership for it. I'm not familiar with the other landfills, so sometimes it can be gas quality, gas volume that might make them ineligible or lesser prospects, but I can tell you why we are here, and that's because of our partnership with Republic across the country.
that's fine. I certainly don't want to chase you away, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious because those are big close to each other.
No problem. Anybody else?
How many employees do you anticipate having on site?
Typically have between 6 and 8. It's not a heavy manned operation. Usually 1 or 2 people during the day and 1 at night. Sometimes they're very automated. Again, it's just a pumping station, like some of the compressor stations for some of the natural gas companies. But yeah, 6 to 8 is pretty typical employee range full-time. And, obviously during construction phase and all of that, there's a lot more people there, a lot more contractors.
Well, I got the carpenters union over there. They're gonna wanna use local resources. So I'll just jump right on that for you.
No, I mean, that's not uncommon. And I mean, that's generally you want to do that anyway, because that's, you get the people that know the people in the area. It's easier to get things done. And it's just good for the economy of the area that you're trying to be a partner.
What's the timeline to build? How long does it take?
Construction is not that long, but between ordering equipment, getting the engineering done, it's probably an 18 to 24 month process.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the construction of it. I'm a carpenter too, but is there any special skills that are needed that the local training could be happening on so that we could be available for these all across our area?
There's, some of the skills sets that are out there is obviously there's foundations that have to be set. There's a lot of electrical work. There's a lot of piping and welding and that type of work that we would definitely bring to the table. And that's the majority of it.
Yeah, I would just hope that you would work with locals where we have local construction people on this. And that'd be very great. Yeah, thank you.
That's always our goal.
Any additional questions for Steve?
Steve, other than the connection with Republic across the states, what excels as far as qualification for this particular landfill?
Well, again, as part of our relationship with Republic, they have basically done surveys of all their landfill and given us gas quality analysis. So part of it is, the location, the ability to locate a facility either in the landfill site itself or relatively adjacent to it, the availability of an interconnection pipeline with a utility is a big deal. This one is actually a bit of a stretch, having to do the 6-mile pipeline. But nonetheless, the projected gas production, the quality of the gas is basically what Republic presents to us. And then from there, we evaluate each site. And that's what's driven us towards this one.
Would this construction take place on Republic's property, or would you be getting another piece of property adjacent to it?
We're looking at both options. We have a site within the Republic landfill. It's not ideal as far as shape, just because of the configuration of landfill. So that has had us look at an adjacent site as a potential possibility. And again, but we have to evaluate both, make sure that the adjacent site is zoned properly, that we could build it, and that we could even acquire it. So.
Okay, so just to fill everybody in, that's what it was. The adjacent site is in 2 different municipalities. So there's some, because you know how Amboy.
Yeah, I was gonna say Amboy and Lee County.
Yep. And so there's some work that's being done there of who's going to take the lead. Actually, I believe we should. And yeah, the revenue is different, but let's figure out how it's going to work. So we'll work through some of that stuff. But that's what it was. It's actually adjacent property on the west side of the road, correct? So it would make.
So one of the reasons I had Nick join me is because they do a lot of our pipeline negotiation work and the engineering and all of that stuff. And I just wanted, the pipeline has obviously been a big source of discussion through this process. And basically I wanted you to be aware of, their qualifications and abilities so that, again, you're comfortable that Ameresco is, a quality company that, wants to be a member of this community from a business aspect, and that we bring in qualified expertise to help us as well.
All right.
You want to pull? Is it a different presentation or is it?
Right, there should be a PDF in there. It's several pages, but I'll just keep it to the first 6 or 7 pages or so. that are
Nick,
more
how do you spell your last name?
Polk, P-O-L-K.
You want them to scroll to the top of that PDF? Please.
So that's just a cover sheet. You can go down to the 3rd page. So just a little bit about Audubon. We're a multidiscipline engineering company, and we also provide EPC services. It's engineering, procurement, and construction services. We've got about over 1,000 employees from 13 offices, mostly in the United States. That includes our field personnel as well. We're an established company for over 20 years. The company began in the offshore market, and along the way, you see the list at the bottom of the page here. Some of our markets served today: energy and chemicals, which includes offshore, onshore oil and gas, pipelines and terminals, petrochem, LNG plants, power and utilities, infrastructure, clean energy, which includes this type of project for renewables. Next page. So the pipeline engineering is mostly the group that I work with. I'm a project manager with this group within our company, and we're involved through the full life cycle of the project, or we can be through the conceptual phase, helping with the project development, doing initial preliminary analysis, feed studies, through the project-specific detailed design, construction support, and as-built and startup and commissioning. We also support operators during, if they have any needs during operation of their assets as well. We design our pipelines in accordance with federal standards, CFR DOT 192 and 195 for gas and liquids, as well as ASME B314 and B318. So those are well-known federal standards and industry standards. Once we get down to the local level, usually the local municipalities, counties, cities, whatever it is, adhere to the federal standards. So that's what we've been talking with you guys about a little bit.
Yeah, and you've seen the AMO. Our primary is probably going to be driven by the AMO, and you got.
Yes, we've seen the list, and most of that is typical.
As Mr. Wilson just texted me, he goes, "There's so much government regulation and oversight with pipelines that's not the issue." So,
Right, most of that is standard, and if usually we'll review like the local requirements, like you're talking about the AMA, and anything that stands out as being more stringent. We usually just incorporate the more stringent, which is, like I said, it's mostly standard. It's almost, if there is anything more stringent, usually there isn't, but if there is, it's not much different. But you see a bunch of our other capabilities for engineering and design here. We do a lot of work for the major pipeline transmission companies, which would include compressor stations, pump stations, mainline valves, meter stations and interconnect sites, tank farms. We have typical capabilities of any civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering company. We do 3D modeling, pipe stress analysis, constructability analysis, due diligence services, basically anything to do with the design phase of the project. Next slide, or next page. So we also provide project management support. Like I said, through the life cycle of the project. Right now, with the Lee County project, we're in the transitioning more into the project-specific design phase. One of the next slides will be more specific with right-of-way, but we've helped Ameresco with this project through conceptual feasibility analysis, project estimating, total TIC estimate, which is total install cost estimating. We have procurement services, kind of goes back to our engineering and design capabilities. All the materials have to be designed in accordance with federal safety standards. So, your pipe wall thicknesses and any materials used have to be part of the approved materials. And all that is laid out in the federal standards. Next page. So pipeline construction and management support, management and inspection. We have on-site services during construction, whether it's pre-construction support, on-site support for inspections and commissioning and startup as well. So a lot of times we'll have inspectors that are responsible and we're accountable for making sure the projects get installed according to the design, which, like I said, is regulated by PHMSA and the federal government. So these projects, they have to be designed a certain way, you know. We watch the construction companies build everything. We document everything that they do, everything they purchase, and provide inspection for every weld. And it's all recorded and documented for compliance.
Question to you, do you also use local labor, or is this, because it's a specialty, is it something that we don't have the local labor? I don't know. I'm asking that.
Well, as far as the construction, I think for this project, we've talked about that, it would probably have to be local labor. The inspection is typically a third party, not associated with construction, just for
Right.
conflict. But we have our inspection staff is all over the country, so it could be someone local.
But the actual installation of the pipeline is as close as you can get to the people at a fair value, right? Is what you-
Right.
Okay, I didn't know that there was pipeline people this close, so. Even
Yeah, no,
better.
there is I'm involved with other projects in this area, and I don't have a huge list because I'm not from this area, but I am dealing with several local contractors that are involved in projects that I'm also involved with in this area. So that might be something we might be discussing with you guys if you have preferred local people that
Great,
you'd like
now
to
you
work
opened
with.
up Tom, here he comes.
Yep, we've got plenty of information for you on that, and just so long as we keep it as local as possible and don't have a whole lot of travelers. I mean, there's plenty of companies within a 100-mile radius of Dixon that can absolutely facilitate what you guys want. So,
And I mean, bottom line, that ultimately usually saves us money. If you're bringing construction groups in from far away, the mobilization, demobilization costs and everything else, and it can really add up. And it's just better business to do as
yeah,
local.
we just don't want travelers. I mean, we got plenty of labor right here in our backyard, and there's a lot of great companies in the Rockford area and Chicago and Elgin. I mean, yeah, we can help you guys with that as well.
Sounds good. No, we appreciate that. And like I said, we want to be part of the business community here, and that's definitely one way you do it. And I can attest our Detroit plant was all pretty much local labor, the ones you saw the picture of, and as well as the Texas plant.
And I think you saw the pipeline map that was showed a while ago. There's pipelines that run through this area all over the state. So if there wasn't people that were local that work on those, that have the experience nearby, nobody would be able to afford mobilizing a construction crew from somewhere really far away to do work and maintenance all the time. So I guess the next slide or the next page. We also provide survey and mapping services. So we've got on-site survey crews. We do topographic surveys, laser scanning, hydrographic surveys. We've got our registered professional land surveyors, registered in most of the states throughout the United States.
Do they work for you directly?
Yes, they do.
Because we've got a lot of surveying and engineers around here as well. If they could be of assistance.
Just so you know, we've had some of the site work, the soil boring, and some of that by Illinois engineering firms as well. I mean,
Sure.
we have numerous partners, but Audubon right now, kind of guides us a lot and is our big partner on this one.
I guess when it comes to pipeline surveying, our surveyors, when it comes to PHMSA regulations, there are certain, I guess there's a certain skill set that the surveyors know exactly what is supposed to be recorded, and it's even though we have registered professional land surveyors that can provide property plats or anything like that for your typical property acquisition or whatever it is. There's also a different aspect whenever it comes to the pipeline construction. So, we have crews that are experienced doing FERC 7C projects, which is a pipeline regulation. So there's just different, there's a specific set of requirements that are typical for pipeline projects that our surveyors are familiar with. The next page. So land and right of way is probably the biggest aspect of the project that we've been working on right now. It makes or breaks a project. And we've got people in-house as well as hired contractors. Wherever your project is, you'd like to have a local person who's more familiar with the area, and we do have a local right-of-way person hired to represent us for this project. We've been communicating with all of the potential landowners that will be impacted by the project. We are negotiating for pipeline easements, and you see the list of capabilities down below. We will be involved with the acquisition, recording easements, title and ownership research, document preparation and management. Our right-of-way agents are involved through the beginning of the project when, because the project's not going to go if we can't get pipeline easements. They're involved from the beginning through construction to support during construction and any needs that notifications to the landowners prior to construction or activities on their properties, anything like that. There's a bunch more pages, but I'm not going to go through the rest just because we don't probably have time to go through everything, but that's most of what we've been involved with for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, of course, we had Dave Anderson. He's our county superintendent of highways here. And he suggested some setbacks. I mean, I've seen other counties where the roads had to be widened because of expansion and stuff. And we don't want to end up with a cost of having to move a pipeline again. Just want to make sure that you're going to be working with them or with our county specs for setbacks on highways and stuff like that.
Just to jump in real quick, we had a call with Dee and David just the other day. And based on David's comments, we really won't be impacting many county roads other than crossings if we don't use the county road right away. And I guess we can put your take on the comments there.
Yeah, that's like Steve said, we spoke the other day about it. Anywhere where we're going to be within the road right of way, we'll most likely be crossing perpendicular at a 90-degree angle, and we'll extend that 90-degree angle far enough out from the existing road right of way. That way, if the right of way expands, that it will hopefully not impact the pipeline. And as far as setbacks, I think typically the setbacks that we're talking about we're able to accommodate. There's some areas where we've talked about maybe getting variances. For instance, if we're talking about a 50-foot setback, and there's a house or a building within that 50-foot setback, we wouldn't route the pipe, we wouldn't route the pipeline through the house or under the house. For that, in that case, we'd either get a variance to be within the 50 feet, or we'd have to figure out a different route for the pipeline.
You talked about setbacks from county roads. My understanding, a big portion of this would run parallel to US 30. I would expect that we'd honor the same setbacks along that highway that we would county roads.
I guess we will need to be, there's something that David and Dee and us brought up in our last meeting is some of the other road jurisdictions kind of pointed the finger saying that Lee County will approve all of our stuff, but we're going to go back to those, whether it's IDOT or Amboy, whoever it is. And
Okay,
we've got to
South Dixon
communicate back.
Township would be involved also.
Correct, and I think they pointed the finger at us, same thing as Marion Township, I believe, and said, whatever you guys approve, we're gonna go with
Okay.
that, so.
But I want to be sure that the about
What-
30 is.
So as you look at the ordinance, one of the blank spots is pipeline must be set back a minimum of blank feet from existing dwelling. What's your guys' recommendation? Like, we found out that working with industry is a heck of a lot easier than us trying to throw some stuff at the wall. What works, and I don't know how many dwellings you're actually going by. If my map, the map that I looked at, I believe you're only going by one, maybe two dwellings as it is, so.
Right. There are some cases where on other projects where we are close to dwellings. We have our integrity group do an analysis whenever we're within a certain distance from a building, whether that's personal property or if it's a business. We wouldn't overlap our pipeline easement or right of way with another building or structure. And typically the landowners don't want us up against their homes or buildings. I don't think there's a specific requirement for that. But for new pipeline installations, we're not typically within 100 feet of a home.
Thank you.
Nick, I have a question. Excuse me, for Steve, whichever category it falls under first. Safety concerns. Where is either one of the entities at as far as compliance with the safety regulations that are in place? What rating does the company have as far as safety standards? That's my concern. Whether it's compliance or what may have you've ever had to address.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I caught most of that, and I guess I can answer that. We hold this in very high standards. Obviously, especially if you've got buildings, there's issues with potential leaks or anything like that. So first of all, the standards that we're held to are very high for that particular reason, and that we have to comply with. We have an excellent safety track record. It's a big deal to us because as a company, if you start having a poor safety track record, your loss prevention liability insurance starts to go through the roof, and it's just poor business anyway. Your employees and are your number one concern. And as a company, that's always our number one concern, to the point where, I can even say we have weekly meetings or phone meetings talking about the pipeline. And it's pretty common for us to start the meeting with some sort of safety objective, even that may seem irrelevant to the topic, but I mean, we've started the meeting where weather's changing. You got to be thinking about getting snow tires. I mean, it's a big concern and it's always on the forefront to that level. I am not directly associated with our operating group, but I can get some information on the track record for you. And I can assure you it's top priority.
Thank you. I'm not a safety inspector. I want you to know that. I don't operate as a safety inspector, but I am on the Public Safety Committee, of which I'm chairperson of. And I guess my entire lifespan has been based with public and safety aspects of it. So I take concern on that, and I'll probably stay that way. But I was noticing in 2 or 3 of the slides of the plants that you have, I believe it was in Texas, there was no placards or signs or anything on the buildings or the property explaining the potential for hazards. Is that, and please, I'm not trying to pick you apart. I'm just trying to find out if the buildings need to be placarded for specific safety reasons so that people, fire department, EMS situation, law enforcement entering these fields, that they need to be particularly aware of. Is there a plan that's in place for that type of response?
And it may have not shown up well in the picture, but I actually come from an operational background. And strangely enough, that's one of the very things that I was looking at when I was at both the Texas and the Detroit plant was the labeling and stuff on the piping, that it actually is there, and that I found it done very well from usually new plants. You have to do a little adding on once the plant is done, but I found it very easily traceable through the plant as far as what the pipes runs, the directions. So again, I think that's something we employ, and I'm hoping it just didn't show up well in the picture or something, but it does exist.
Yeah, I'm assuming that when this comes operational, if it does, that you'll invite all the local fire departments to tour the facility so they have a general knowledge, and try to do that at least once a year, if not every other year, just to make sure all their personnel is up and trained.
I mean, that stuff was very standard for me. Like I said, I come from an operational background, power plants, and it was very customary, like you said, to have the fire department over, do drills, do, just meetings and tours through the plant, because sometimes personnel change and you want to keep them up to date. But again, that's just good being a member of the community.
Okay, thank you.
As far as the pipeline as well, something that we've discussed at each road crossing, pipeline markers so that people know that it's there, as well as along the pipeline. There's typically markers. If you're standing at a pipeline marker, you can see the next marker. So whenever it's a buried pipeline, so you can't see it, but if you can see the markers, you know that it's there.
Is that standard?
Is
You're going to do that, whether it's in our ordinance or we should just put it in our ordinance to make sure.
well, typically the like for a road crossing or something, no.
FEMA
It's
mandate.
usually required to have a pipeline marker on each side of the road crossing.
Perfect. I think regardless, let's put that in the ordinance to require it within line of sight, something.
Right, exactly. That's
Bubble.
standard.
That's a great idea.
Nick, question on that. I guess we're sensitive because we had an accident here just a few years ago with a serious accident with a pipeline. Is there some way that is monitored to be sure those are still there? I mean, the pipeline, we had a problem with, it's been in for 60, 70 years. My understanding is some of the markers were gone, and the farm community maybe didn't know it was there when they looked at it. That's irrelevant, but I mean, is there some way to, once those are up, those things tend to disappear. Is there a way to, is it checked every couple of years or something to be sure there's still signs there? How do we do that? Am I making sense of my question?
You are. It totally makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Amoresco would be responsible for inspecting their easement and their right of way. And, you know, I guess that's that type of inspection. I'm not sure what the frequency is of that, but you know, it's a metallic pipeline. It can be located easily, even if there isn't a marker or if the marker goes away. These markers, they're for this pipeline, it'll be alongside of the road. Sometimes, you know, that's why we avoid traversing a pipeline through the middle of a farmland or crops, because you'll never have a marker in the middle of somebody's crop. So this goes along the roadside. And these aren't your typical, it's not just gonna be a stake in the ground. It'll be a heavy duty marker, and you know, those can be replaced, and the pipeline will be easily located. It's metallic. Any pipeline locator will be able to pick it up and replace a marker.
Thank you.
I've forgotten, are we looking at a 4 or 5 inch diameter pipeline? Is that cool?
4-inch most likely.
Thank you.
Lost the chair.
Yeah.
From a design perspective too, the smaller pipes are typically rated for a lot higher pressure than what's required. You know, there will be a safety factor set by the federal government that we have to design to, and most likely will be designed well above that safety factor.
Anybody else have any questions in the audience of the special visitors? Sorry, we can take over.
Back to you. Thank you. We'll meet afterwards. I believe we've got a little powwow going on after that. Moving on. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do, they've got all the information in front of them. They got a pipeline ordinance. They've got the landfill, renewable gas facility. Take a look at that. We'll hopefully, I would love to have something. I know you guys want to get started here, I believe in the spring, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like to get this permit or this ordinance in place and move it on to planning. Ideally would be in January. Would you see any problem with that, Alice? Or
Is all this been forwarded to Dave to review?
Yes,
and Charlie?
not to Charlie yet.
Okay.
We'll go through all of our stuff before he takes the final.
So everybody. Go ahead, sorry.
Did anyone have a chance to look at it ahead of time?
Not I.
Okay, then that's fine. I just didn't know if anyone had any questions. I have some stuff highlighted. Those are more of just notes for me and stuff I gotta follow up on.
Yeah, like there's some stuff here like pipeline setback a minimum of 100. He said 100 feet from any dwelling kind of fit. Pipeline setback of a minimum of how many feet from an existing drainage system? You got any recommendations there that you'd like to see?
Take this back.
Yep. The sooner you can get back to us, the better, and that way we can get things moving to Charlie.
And this, what I have prepared, I mean, I took a lot and just threw it in there. It's gonna be up to you guys to decide what stays and what goes. And make further definitions on the blanks that I have left, so.
Yep. So we'll go back, do some research, read it, and we'll make recommendations on those blanks. With your guys' help, the sooner you can get it to us, the more we can have discussions one-on-one about where we need to take this ordinance. So appreciate all the input. Moving on, solar ordinance on residential. Alice was not able to get to that. It is just, this has occupied a good chunk of her time, plus ZBA hearings, plus, so there's not going to be any discussion there. I had the opportunity to meet with Emily and Anthony back there yesterday, and they have an update for battery energy storage systems for us, if they would like to give that.
it's not working. Can she?
Want to try this one?
Thank you. Here, Emily.
We're good.
Oh, okay. Wait for that one. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Oh, that's definitely working now. Great. Well, I'm Emily Skill. I work for Enel Green Power. I've spoken to you all before. Thank you again for the time today. I've been working with Chris and a few other members of the committee to discuss and talk about the battery storage ordinance. Enel Green Power has projects in operation that have battery storage, as well as are currently constructing projects in the United States that have battery storage incorporated with wind and solar projects. So, Chris asked for a little bit of assistance in putting together an ordinance. So I've been working closely with our battery storage team to put together what would be a template or a model ordinance that Lee County can use and structure their own ordinance from. So our team right now is very much in the midst of getting that together for you. I've wanted to have something to present in early January, but I don't think we'll have anything ready to share with you all until the end of January. With that said, then it's probably more likely that you won't have an ordinance in place if it's going to be structured from what we're giving you until probably February or March, depending on your own timeline and how much time you'll need to get that approved and moved forward with your own process there. But I did want to update you. We will have something for you in January toward the end of the month. And probably at that February meeting, I'd like to present to you that model ordinance that we're putting together at the February Renewable Energy Committee meeting. So that's the timeline and the update I have for you all there. The project that I've been working on in the county is the Bison Meadows Wind Project. It will have storage associated with it. We are, a year and a half out from when we want to, ask for our special use permit. So by no means is this a rush. We're here to work with you on trying to get an ordinance in place, but we don't plan to request a special use permit from you for another year and a half or so. So from our timeline, this is, we're working with you and we want to get something on the for the county in case any other developer comes by, but we're not rushing you, and we want to work with you on trying to get something that benefits all parties involved.
Yep. So we did discuss a little bit. I believe our moratorium ends in February, March, something like that. It's very close to that. We're going to be pushing up to a deadline of the moratorium running out, just based off their timeline, the holidays, so on and so forth. And kind of we discussed a little bit of maybe even from their recommendation of extending the moratorium, just to make sure we have everything in place, make sure everything's kosher. As I said, they're the company that's sitting here working with us. If there was another company that said, hey, we need to have it in 3 months, well, they're not in this room helping us develop it. So I appreciate Anel and Emily and Anthony. And so kind of based off their recommendation, I'd like to see the moratorium for battery backup.
I would concur. I mean, they're not rushing us, but they're here helping us. And I think we need to be sure we've got all our ducks in a row when we do pass it.
Mm-hmm. And that does not hurt their timeline. It does not affect them. So to the point that if you were in a rush, should have been in this room, right?
If
So,
they're in a rush, there must be a reason they're rushing past what we're going to put in place. So.
and that's the great thing about Emily and her team being able to get us something that's probably 85-90% complete. Or might maybe have to make some tweaks to fit the citizens in Lee County, but making the analysis life simple of not having to recreate something really frees up their time to focus on pipeline, CBA hearings, and so on and so
We
forth.
got, So many issues on their plate.
Correct. So this is, I would like to make I'd entertain a motion to recommend to the county board an extension of 6 months of
Extending the moratorium. for
extending the
6
moratorium for battery energy storage systems an additional 6 months.
I would make that motion.
And do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Copeland?
Excuse me, I'll second it.
And any other discussion? Emily, you're perfectly cool with that, right?
Yeah, like I said, our company is not planning to come forward requesting a special use anytime in the next year and a half. So that's fine with us. We're here to be helpful to you all and want to work with you on this and make sure we've got something in place that protects all parties involved.
The big thing is we could rush through it and get it approved in April and we can lift the moratorium and away we go. But this gives us plenty of time to make sure we do it right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think we need to take the term rush out of there. Excuse me. I went this moratorium route once. And here we are again, moratorium. If we would have started that,
Well,
not that I'm trying to take any credit. We don't need to rush through this stuff. That's why we're where we're at on some of this stuff. Let's pay attention to what we've got going and take the time necessary.
to the conversation we'll have here shortly, I believe just on the wind and solar moratorium, I have close to a 17 email chain right now, just trying to deal with some of that. So, and that's just over a 2.5, 3 day period. It's been very, very challenging to say the least. So any additional discussion, Mr. Ballard, do you got any problems with that if they don't? All those,
Is 3 months necessary or 6 months necessary?
the reason for 6 months is A, it's already a 6-month moratorium that's written. B, we can always lift it. And to their point, if we get it done and we're ready to proceed and we can lift the moratorium, it's no issue. We talked about that the other day, Emily and I and Anthony, that we could do a 3 month. And if we don't get it done in 3 months, then we're right back here asking for 3 months. We should be able to get this done in 12 months time. That's essentially what we've given ourselves to get an ordinance in place for energy storage. We can't get it in 12 months. We got to get our ducks in a row.
And as long as the company is
and-
okay with it, you know, they're the ones that are here at the table with us. So let's get it right.
Correct. So, yeah, any further discussion? All those in favor of sending, it's got to go to property, correct? So this recommendation will go to properties. If you're okay amending that, Mr. Copine. We'll go to properties. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Perfect. Nothing on wind energy conversion system ordinance update. The last thing I have, and you guys probably seen it or at least heard about it, is a wind and solar energy moratorium. I believe everybody's seen it or at least heard about it. This is a 3-month moratorium is what I'm proposing. I believe we talked about this last month. And really, as I explained it, we've had some concerned developers. I'm just calling this half-time, right? That we need to take a break. We need to your point, Mr. Copine, not rush through this with having people breathing down our neck to make sure we get this done as fast as we can. We can go at our pace and our schedule to make sure it gets done. And that's the reason why I believe. I even had a conversation with, like I said, these guys yesterday, and they were concerned about the wind moratorium. I'm like, there's some stuff in there that I'd like to open up and discuss. And they're like, okay, we understand. But this gives us a chance to open up the Pandora's box, proverbial Pandora's box, and not have somebody breathing down our neck is how I look at it. So any other?
I would prefer that we do a 6-month moratorium to give us ourselves time. Government moves slow.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Did not know that.
And again, to your point that you made earlier, if we got all our ducks in a row, we can lift that 6-month moratorium rather than asking for an extension.
I
Go ahead, Mr.
just know you use your microphone.
It's not working.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry.
I think we want to open up the ordinance again. I think we've seen a shift. We'll see what the vote on December 21st does, right? Like that's just kind of where I want to leave it. And I think we just have to be able to have open and honest discussion without having somebody breathing down our neck. I thought about 6 months as well, Marilyn. I'm very open to whatever this committee wants to recommend to properties and move that forward. So you're not going to get any complaints out of me, but I figured 3 months.
You know, 3 months should be adequate, but again, government moves slow. And that's why I would say 6, because we develop some, whatever amendments are suggested, and then it's got to go through committee and go through planning and,
And these
it takes time.
these moratoriums will not apply to repowers.
They will not apply, they will not only apply to new projects. So repowers
New
will,
applications. Anybody? who
new
has
application,
already-
no, new projects. So repower is still an application, but it's not a,
But like what we're gonna vote on, any that are out there now being looked at are not subject to this.
correct. None of them,
So we had Big Sky come through recently. They were a repower. They were an existing
Right.
wind farm. They're just updating their equipment. It starts over the taxation on these projects for us, so it increases what we get in taxes. So really, with the repowers, I don't see how it does anyone any good to stop those. For 10
and there's some
years.
stuff that I think we need to look at as far as repowers go, like, should we allow them to be able to move X percentage of their towers? Let's just use a number of, they've got 50 towers. Should they be able to move if they've had, what do you call the word, Anthony? People who are against their neighbors, abutters. If they've got butters who would like to see it moved and it works into the project. Currently, our repower does not allow that. So we could potentially change that in the ordinance.
And the other thing we're running into is with bigger machines, the setbacks are getting bigger. So the location where they're sitting at, the setbacks may not work any longer. So they may have to move turbines to accommodate our ordinance.
But to the point that they shouldn't have to go back through a whole petitioning project, to only have to move 1 or 2. But
I
if
agree,
we
but-
build that into our ordinance, that's the whole thing. Open up Pandora's box and really just have an honest and open conversation without somebody breathing down our neck. That's what I really like about the moratorium. I really, really do.
And I concur.
Some months ago, as Mike alluded to, or mentioned, we tried to get that moratorium in place some time ago for the same reasons we stepped back. So I'm on board.
Valerie?
So this would pertain to like the South Dixon project and stuff?
Would not. No,
because that's.
It would not, it's already on the,
already, if they've already drawn their petition, correct?
okay, so we're just being proactive here for future.
Correct. No.
Okay,
Would not apply to South Dixon, would not apply to Big Sky, which you just repowered, would not apply to whoever you met with on Tuesday, as far as the repower goes. Would,
Any petition filed beyond the date that the county board passes it, any petition filed after that date, it would apply to that.
yeah, December 21st, the original, what I have on my phone is December 21st to April 1st is when it would expire. But if you want to go out 6 months, then you guys, I open it up to discussion. I'd love to see 6 months. To your point, Marilyn, you can lift it.
Yeah, that's, I'd rather lift it than have to extend it.
Well, in the past, we didn't have this committee sitting on this to make it, this is a huge improvement already. So however we move forward, it's.
Oh, trust me, I'm,
Well,
that's
no,
why I
but
got
think-
gout.
No, it's gonna be, I think it's going the path Mike and I wanted to start months ago.
Yeah, that's close enough. I'm in favor of it, but I want to know if Dee has any input or Alice, other than what's been mentioned so far. A lot of the confusion is, well, maybe the term confusion isn't the proper one to use, but the chaos on some of this stuff is flowing down to Dee and Alice. And
Unfortunately, a lot of the chaos is coming from having ordinances in place that the county board doesn't like. That's where our confusion comes in. We need to know what the county board is supporting so that we can do our jobs. If we have an ordinance in place, that's my job, is to enforce that ordinance, make sure these companies are doing what we require. But if they're doing everything they require and the county still likes it or doesn't like it, then we have a problem. So those are the things that we need. We need to know where the county is heading so that we can make sure that we're doing our job.
There are 24 board members. I have talked to or had lunch specifically on which direction the county wants to take. 7 of the county board members already. The next renewable energy meeting, in my opinion,
What was
Well,
7? What did you say? I'm
I've
sorry.
had personal conversations with 7 county board members. This is a very big decision that I believe everybody, it's no different than, in my mind, the ARPA meeting. When we do this meeting next month, if you want your voice to be heard as far as which direction Lee County wants to go on solar and wind, be here to participate. So that way it's not just me or you or this committee making the decision. It is a full 24, and we're not all going to be happy. We're not. It's compromise, but we never are. And but we need to have full discussion of a county board, in my opinion, and figure out what we really want. So this allows us to do it without.
Are you going to include that statement in your report?
What's that? Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, I can discuss that when we discuss the solar and wind moratorium. That we be here.
And
Otherwise, your input doesn't matter.
further on what Mike had asked, I have a lot of concerns with us going into moratoriums. I do have concerns about what message we are sending. But again, my job is to do what you guys decide, so.
Emily and Anthony, we had a discussion yesterday, and you guys were concerned about a moratorium, and after actually sitting down with us, how does where's your heartburn level on the reason for the moratorium set? But as a developer, maybe you're still upset that we're gonna look at a moratorium, but I want your honest opinion.
So, I mean, like Alice said, it could send the wrong message, but because we have this relationship with you and we get to interact with you and hear about what's going on in the county, it's not a risk to us right now. As I mentioned, we're 1.5 years out from requesting a permit, or even submitting our application materials for a special use permit. So our company is not in a rush. We are here to follow the ordinance that you set. And if your county needs time to identify what that looks like, we're going to be here to answer questions and be part of that conversation, Chris, as you mentioned. But, it's not my say to tell you what to do or what not to do. You're the officials, you've been elected and put in these positions. And, I respect the work you do.
I'd be interested in Farm Bureau's comments. We've asked them to attend and see them.
Do you have any comment are you concerned about a moratorium, or do you understand where we're going and the reason for it?
I mean, I follow what you're saying, so I mean, I can't speak to what that would mean to others, but I mean, I understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Not we're saying no, we just want to make sure we get it right without having the confusion that we have. So
I think Ogle County did a moratorium, did they not?
They are still under moratorium, and that's their way of dealing.
I guess my biggest confusion as far as the use of the term moratorium is if these companies are 1 year to 1.5 years or 2 years out from beginning any type of construction whatsoever, what is a 6 or a 12-month moratorium, or how is it going to affect them?
That can have a huge impact.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
tons going on behind the scenes. And I can let Emily talk to that and she can maybe explain, but in conversations we've had with companies, if we put them under a moratorium now for 6 months, that could ultimately stop the project. It may not take it out of our area forever, but it might be, 1 year or 2 before they're able to come back in, or they might not be able to choose us ultimately. So that's the thing that we have to keep in mind is we could lose projects. So that's what the county needs to decide is
You'll
how
put up
much they need these renewable projects.
And they'll just put up
Thanks.
another one because they're at least at the table talking to us, right?
You know-
And the reason why we're putting in the moratorium, that and I'm guessing you probably spoke to Tom about, hey, they're putting a moratorium and this is why they're doing it. They're not having to pump their brakes at this point because of the relationship we have. Maybe they're slowing down a little bit and 24 months might go to 25 months for them because the risk of a moratorium. But there are companies out there that if they were closer or farther along or whatever, would have to completely stop because bank backing, development, so on and so forth. It depends how every company operates. So
I would still favor the moratorium. You know, if a company really values Lee County and wants to be in Lee County, they're gonna want to respect our rules, regulations, ordinances, whatever we call it. And they'll wait. If they're ready to just ram something through, they'll do it.
If I could just add to kind of echo what Alice was saying, every developing company is going to be different. A 3 to 6 month moratorium for a NEL is not going to negatively affect us. If we talk longer, it may. I think 12 months could might be detrimental to the project, but I'm planning to be here throughout the moratorium. I plan to still meet with board members and come to these committee meetings, and so still be involved and hear what's going on. But at this point, we understand, why Chris wants to move forward with this moratorium, and we respect that, of course. And we're here to provide assistance and, happy to be involved in as many conversations as you would like us to. But I do think there is, a message that is being sent, but I don't see an issue for our company for that being with a 3-month moratorium.
I see more of an issue if we pass a 3-month moratorium and then decide we're gonna extend it. I'd much rather have the 6-month moratorium and back it off early when we're ready.
I agree with that.
Yeah, the word moratorium is a horrible thing. I mean, if there's somebody in the works and they're looking at that, there's counties that just use these extending moratoriums because they're not trying to go forward. They're not looking at wanting it. I wish there was a better word. I wish there was we're gonna put a date. We want to come talk to us. We're trying to draw it right and, keep the door look like it's open some. Emily's here. She understands that we just didn't say moratorium. We're working with somebody, but we don't want to take somebody that is working undercover right now and saying, oh my God, why are we bothering here? Let's go on to another county or another area, which could be a great asset to our area. So,
Well,
to your point, if you're not willing to work with us,
yeah. And then
Yeah.
is there another word? Come in and talk to us. I mean, you're going to be on hold for a little while, but you're not going to be out the door.
how hard am I to get a hold of Anthony and Emily? Not very hard. You want to know, you want to talk.
Yeah.
Usually within the hour, I'm calling you back.
So we were approached by one of our existing wind farms the other day. They are looking to repower. Moratorium is what brought them to the table. They had major concerns how that would impact them going forward. If the moratorium doesn't apply to repowers, then it's not going to affect them. But they did say that a 3-month moratorium would shut their project down if it included repowers. So
Once again, that brought them to the table to have the discussion, to work with industry, to figure it out. And that's all we're asking.
but I'm just trying to say there is a lot that goes on in the background as far as studies and things that they're doing to try to find out if this is a viable area. So, when we do a moratorium, it could halt some projects.
It's no different than Amoresco being willing to speak with us here after the meeting. If they're at the table to talk, it makes it,
Yeah.
we're willing to work. We've proven it time and time again. You look at the Nelson project, wanting to use solar in an industrial zone. We approved that with very little, no pushback, right? Like, it was
No,
like, here it
that
is.
was-
This is what you want to do. We agree with it. We're excited about it. we've proven that we want to work with industry, especially when industry wants to work with us.
That's the key.
And we've had solar come and sit in with us before we started this committee, as a committee rewriting the ordinance. As I said before, I was in favor of a moratorium to start with, but I am concerned with Alice and Dee's comments. Do we want something different than just a moratorium? Do we want to say we're on hold while we look at our ordinance? Are we?
The problem is the word that you want to
Well,
use is a moratorium. It just, it sounds awful.
That sounds
If you look at the
awful.
resolution that's prepared,
Preparation or
it
something.
talks about, that the purpose of the moratorium is
Okay.
for review.
Give me one
It
second.
wouldn't
I'll-
apply to the repowers, and it would be for a specific period of
Okay.
time. And those are kind of the key things you want if you're gonna go with the moratorium.
I think it's all this activity that being inundated with all the wind energy that's here, the solar energy that's now coming in. We as a board are trying to get focused on the elements of everything being done kosher for both sides, not just the county or not just the businesses coming in. We want it even across the board, as even as we can get it and as workable as we can get it.
So
We haven't been able to do that. We've got 2 ordinances for solar right now. Have we ever even completed the number 1? I think we did, but now we're on number 2. And where are we at with number 2? There's so much confusion going on out there right now, just between 1 and 2. We need to take the time. We need to stop and think about what we're doing and get everybody's ducks in a row. It's a compatible, workable plan is what it is, or what I think we should work for. And I think we're working that way, but Dee and Alice are just, they're bombarded.
So I will read what it says. Whereas Lee County wishes to review all of its policies, ordinances pertaining to renewable energy system, and whereas persistent to resolution 9/21/25 effective September 16, 2021, Lee County established a renewable energy committee to review the ordinances, resolutions, policies related to renewable energy development in Lee County. And whereas the Renewable Energy Committee is seeking a moratorium on renewable energy systems in Lee County until said review is complete, and now thereafter be it resolved, effective upon passage by the Lee County, a moratorium on accepting zoning petitions for new renewable energy systems is hereby in place until whichever date, 3 months would be April 1st, 2022, pending the Renewable Energy Committee's review.
But I think that is that the one specific to solar energy
It was
systems?
all, they were both.
Okay.
She was gonna come up with, she was gonna do 2.
We are gonna do 2 separate, one to address solar and one to address
To the
wind.
point, if wind gets in there and we're happy with where it's at, we can always go with it. And if we're not happy with solar, then we can, we have the ability. And that's the real thing, is I want to open Pandora's box without feeling rushed.
Okay, when you mentioned renewable energy, is this going to affect the renewable natural gas?
That's why we changed it to specifically, we'll have 2 moratoriums, one for solar and one for wind. So that's why the change happened.
Dee, thoughts or comments?
Again, I want to reiterate, I need to know where the direction that you're thinking of these changes.
That's what we need to discuss.
Just finished up on the amendments on wind and solar. So now you're wanting us to slow down. But I have no idea where in the ordinances you want changes. I don't know your thinking. And
I don't know if
our
we did,
office has been burdened
but we
with,
did talk about it.
with these new ordinances coming at us, and we're not getting much help.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing, is that if the county board's gonna pass an ordinance, and it's our job to enforce it, that's the ordinance that the county board respects and is willing to follow. And, we've had a lot of back and forth recently with one of our ordinances, and that's part of the thing is.
We haven't even tried this new one, this amended one.
Well, I would
Now you're
question at this
saying
point,
we
whose
need
ordinance is
to
it?
review
Is
it
it the
again.
entities that are coming in to acquire
No.
land for putting their facilities in? Or is it the operating procedures for the people that are within the county that we want to keep safety minded for and the proper procedures? Not taking the top half of Lee County as far as prime production land and taking it out of, it's guidelines that are geared for the people in the Lee County, the other businesses in Lee County, as well as the businesses that are wanting to come in. It's trying to establish that workable plan. And I share your frustration because of this on the solar, the first ordinance, then now we're on the second. Are we done with the second yet? Something always comes up, regardless of what side it's on. I could put my opinion in there, but I won't. But that's what's keeping us going. That's what I think this recess, I'm not going to use the term moratorium, the recess, moratorium, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're trying to get established so we can get coordinated, get everybody on the same books. And Alice is right. You just get to a point where you think something's going, somebody else comes back in. And I had it happen when I was on the solar ad hoc. Somebody else, well, I think I would like to do, can I do this? No, you can't. The negotiations had already been closed. Why do we keep doing that? We wouldn't need a recess or whatever you want to call it if that was the case. We'd have it done. We would have had it done. Quit going back and forth across the fence and trying to figure it out for both parties. It's Lee County.
Well, and that's kind of the key. I mean, we are trying to work with industry. But if the county board is not going to support the ordinance that supports industry, then we're doing it wrong. I want an ordinance that the county board is going to abide by. If we don't agree with what's in it, then let's make those changes so that it says what you want it to say. But right now I have a document that I'm getting the impression that nobody seems to take seriously. So then that makes my job difficult. So, because I'm telling them that they got to comply with an ordinance, but I got a county board that says our ordinance isn't good.
Our second solar ordinance was voted in place, correct? After all the work we did on it, involving people in this room and people no longer in this room. And to your point, Dee, we've never had anybody use it yet.
Yeah. You voted to approve it.
So what,
There it
and I know
stands.
there's animosity about a vote that will come up this month. But outside of that, and I favor us getting things right and that being a living document, we continue to do it. But to Dee's point, we haven't even given the
Second
document
Amendment.
the right to be used yet, and we're already wanting to all change it. And it's not because, my concern is, are we following the right reason for it, or are we following it because of what we may vote on later this month? I'm not opposed to a moratorium to get things right, and I think we need to have that continue to be a living document, but I have concerns about a reason for what we're doing.
Well, the explanation that I understood that when we went to the second situation on solar was that we can always amend it. So the ordinance, as far as I'm concerned, has been voted on. The ordinance is in place. It's a functional ordinance. If something needs to be amended, then we need to address it. So why can't we move on with where we're at with that? I'd like to focus on the point that you just brought up, though. I want some more information on that. Well, I'll get with you after the meeting.
Okay.
Let's take that after.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if we don't have changes in mind to this living document we've all approved, what's our moratorium to change? What is it we want? I mean,
I have some ideas and really I don't want to. I want to open it up and throw everything at the wall and not have industry be like, well, we don't like that. We're going to go pull our petition right now. Because at the end of the day, we can open it up and not do anything with our ordinance,
but
right?
nobody's tried to pull a petition. Am I correct? Nobody's tried against the current ordinance that we believe we put all that work into to make it acceptable to the county residents, industry. When I'm hearing from industry, they're not totally happy with it either, but they're willing to work with it because that's what we put together and we make it work for the county. But nobody has yet tried to pull a petition for it or a permit or anything. And I don't mind changing things. We need to change things, keep it alive, keep it follow the times, keep it current. But I'm not sure we need to change something that we don't know doesn't work. We haven't tried it. I mean, when we sat as a group and voted on this, and when the board voted on it, we believed it was going to work. Not every citizen thought it was wonderful, but the ones that sat here agreed with us that it was workable. I know there's people have come back and complained, and
Always
that's
will be.
part of human nature is that, you know, we're never happy and we don't all agree, but I'm not sure that we should reinvent the wheel, if you will, before we found out the round returns. And that maybe it's too simple, but
Yeah, I understand your concern there, and I believe there is some stuff that needs to be discussed in it, and that's also.
then let's discuss it before we do a moratorium and see if we need to do it. Is that, I mean,
Unfortunately, we're in a difficult position with the upcoming vote. I think a lot of that discussion might involve that project, and kind of not at liberty to discuss it, being that it's going to be up for vote soon. So
I mean, I was asked the night we voted on that by two different people to make a motion that was inappropriate, offensive, and I declined. And my reasoning was a slap in the face to this committee, with an insult to the county board to make those changes. So instead, we said we would continue to be open and work with people, and we did that. So at this point, we haven't given this thing a chance to work. I'm afraid we're doing it for the wrong reason because of what I hear about a future vote.
Yeah,
There's concerns, and that would not be an issue under the present ordinance. I don't believe it would be, let's say, because
well, and that's the thing I think that's going to kind of be telling is how this outcome of the vote takes place. It's going to tell how the county wants to go with this ordinance, unfortunately.
That's 100%.
That's kind of
And that's
how
the
I'm
reason for the moratorium is we just
we can agree to
don't.
disagree. I mean,
Yeah, no, and that's fine. And I've said all along, I'll tell you on December 21st, what direction Lee County wants to go with solar. We will know that day. And right now we can all talk in hypotheticals, and we shouldn't be talking in hypotheticals because it's like we got the ZBA hearings and we got a vote that's coming up and blah, 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 blah. Like, I just think that, to your point, if we look at the ordinance, we say there are no changes, we lift the moratorium and we move on. We can do that. But my concern is we start discussing some changes that we want to see based on a yes vote or a no vote. And if industry doesn't like it, they can walk right into that offensive poll petition, and they're going to go based off of the ordinance that's in place that we're trying to change and correct. And that's what I don't, because then we're just in the same situation. I think there's some stuff that's come out of this current project with the current ordinance that needs to be addressed. Personally, I've watched 15 hours of ZBA hearings.
I don't know that I've watched that many, but I've watched some of them.
Alice,
I've been to all of them.
Friday night, she got an email. Friday night, Allison D got an email. Blah, 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 blah,
but those are still against the old ordinance, correct?
Those are under the first.
They're under the first, but they followed the second. There's almost to its entirety.
Okay.
So I'll entertain a motion to send a recommendation of how long do you want? You guys decide. I can go any way, but
If
you
we're gonna
guys.
do it, I would much rather do 6 than 3 for the reasons I said before. It definitely would be sending the wrong message to have a 3 and have to extend it.
To the conversation we had with. the
So I
pipeline.
would go for a 6 and say, once we are satisfied that we have reviewed things, that we think we've got our ducks in a row, we never know for sure.
We never.
That we lift that moratorium.
And to your point, I believe, Mr. Valley, you're like, some of these counties just keep kicking moratoriums, and it's on YouTube right now. My commitment is not just to continue to kick this 6-month moratorium. My commitment to you guys, to the county board, to the project managers, is this is a moratorium to get things correct to make sure. I don't want to extend this another 6 months. That is not my goal of this. And you now have this on camera and recording for the rest of history, that is not the goal of this moratorium.
I don't think it's the goal either. I think the goal, in my opinion, of the goal is to get a workable agreement and an agreement on both sides, county and business entities coming into the county. And we haven't been able to do that at this point. We're there, but as Marilyn said, and Tom had, we haven't allowed it to operate functionally yet, to see if it is going to operate functionally.
Yeah,
And somebody's wanting to change stuff already, you know, so let's settle down here. Let's reach a mutual agreement on both sides. And I agree with Marilyn. I think it should be a 6 month. We can retract that. As they said, we could make amendments to stuff that we didn't like in there.
so I'll entertain a motion
I
Make-
make that motion
of,
of a 6-month moratorium on solar and wind until we reviewed our ordinances. And would lift it earlier if we are set. I want to put that in there also, that, you know, it's not definitely 6 months. There's the possibility of lifting earlier.
and that's going to the properties.
Yes.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, and I'd like to see, okay, now we're not gonna meet once a month and stuff like that on this. So this is, we're gonna push this through. If we have to hire, if we have to do something extra, whatever, but we get this done.
Yeah, so
This is, you know, this has been how long to get to ordinance 2? This doesn't look good to industry. I mean, we are blessed with renewable energy, with the pipeline coming in, with the solar, with the windmills, we got hydro and the thing. I mean, we could look like the outside world, we look like a hell of a county. But moratorium is such a word, and then we sit back and take our time looking at it.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
let's have a
No, we
meeting a
need to
month
get our
from
act together and
now,
move.
and we need a pound on this. And
my goal is, this is December, January meeting, the first meeting, I'd like to wrap up the pipeline and residential solar. I think those are the two things. I don't want to open up too many can of worms. And my goal is to have at least 2 meetings in January, if not 3, to begin this discussion. Because to your point, meeting only once a month, we're not going to get,
that just looks like.
we're not going to get anything
that looks
done.
like
We've got too
endless.
much on our plate to meet once a month.
We have too much on our plate. And with the difference between these ordinance that Alice is prepared is there from the ground up. And she's done a fantastic job on the stuff that we're looking at. We still need
Which
the
took her
residential.
5 weeks,
Yeah, we
5 weeks
still
to
need
work on
residential
this.
solar.
No help.
But that's already built. That one's already complete. We're just
That's what I'm
it
saying.
should
We have to
not take.
hire help or whatever. I mean, we should not hold the industry back.
No, correct. So that is, once again, my goal is at least twice in January, we'll meet. The first time will be to address those 2 issues that are outstanding, pipeline and residential solar, so we can get those done and then move right away into SES projects. So
I agree with Tom. The only thing I would ask is a favor or whatever. The term push this through there again coincides with the term rush or hurry up and get it done, hurry.
But the other term
But
is
everything else in
at our
that,
convenience.
in
And
your statement, but I agree with you,
Right.
but somebody's going to misinterpret the term. Well, there they go. They just went ahead and hurried up and pushed it through to the board's favor or the industry's favor. What else? Workable agreement. Get
So-
it done as effectively and efficiently and as quickly as we can.
you put the hours in, it's not pushed through.
no, so you'll have my
It's
commitment.
Pushed
that-
through when you don't put the hours in and just. jam it out.
I did see, just to go back several years, I did see the loss of a potential $2 million a year revenue because of just what we're discussing about right now. At a different level, it wasn't the county board's level. It didn't get to the county board. Therefore, Lee County lost out on a potential $2 million a year revenue. I hope that that's what we can prevent with where we're going right now, and I think we can.
So Do we need a voice roll call vote or do you want a voice vote?
Let's do roll call.
Yeah,
Okay,
I agree.
roll call
Roll call.
vote. Mr. Wilson's no longer. Alice, would you like to call it or you want me to?
Carolyn,
Yes.
Tom,
No.
Yes.
Dave,
We will know.
Chris.
Yes. Okay, motion passes to properties for a 6-month moratorium. The recommendation of a 6-month moratorium.
Two properties.
2 properties. Is there any other discussion? Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Well, let's set our next meeting. January 6th.
Not gonna try to meet anymore this month, I would assume, because of holidays and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't see a reason you start pushing into the second. Yeah, I think January 6th is the reality of the date.
Thursday the 6th.
If indeed, you know, some things that want to be put in, and we got a whole week next week. If you already know there's issues,
You're missing the forest through the trees. We can't start discussion it until we have the moratorium.
okay.
And that won't happen till board meeting, which is
The 21st.
Yeah.
Correct. 9 o'clock on the 6th. If that works for everybody.
Let's set a couple meetings just so we're,
Yeah, so we're.
we can always cancel if we decide it's not gonna work, but 20th does not work for me.
The 20th of Jan, oh,
Yes.
wait, I'm on the wrong month. 20th would be county board.
That'd be in the evening, but I have a SERMA board meeting that morning.
About the 13th.
That would coincide with finance and executive if we want to sit in on
Oh,
those.
that's right.
And, that's,
So let's go to the 27th. That gives us 3 meetings in a row on or 4 meetings in a row for many of us in this room. You'd have renewable energy in the morning on the 6th, the 13th, you'd have your committee meeting, which would be finance. The 20th would be county board and the 27th. Let's set those 2 dates.
Okay, that's fine.
So the 6th and the 27th,
The 6th and the 27th of January,
9 a.m. for both.
9 a.m.
Actually, it looks like there's an ARPA meeting on the 6th at 9 a.m. So we can go after a different day.
There's an ARPA meeting on the 6th.
It says ARPA.
Yeah, it was changed from the 2nd to the 6th, I believe.
I thought, no, you should.
Yeah.
That's fine. Wednesday, January 5th for renewable energy. That work for everybody?
Works for me.
So the 5th and the 27th, let's change that to 9 a.m. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank